Hello lovely people, I'm coming at you today with a Pat McGrath dupes herself kind of video. I wanted to do this video basically since I got the Bridgerton palette and I basically couldn't stop thinking about how a lot of the shades in that palette and some of the looks that you can create with it are very easily dupable even within the Pat McGrath Labs palette realm. So I asked you in my previous video whether you would be interested to still see this video, and at this point I think it's probably the perfect time to make and release this video because the Bridgerton collection was just restocked and to my knowledge everything is still in stock. And I think it goes without saying, but let me make this clear. This video is obviously going to be targeted at people who already have a relatively large Pat McGrath Labs makeup collection, because I'm going to dupe the Bridgerton palette with several Pat McGrath palettes, not just one of her other palettes. So if you don't have all of these other palettes and you are interested in the color story of the Bridgerton palette, by all means knock yourself out and get it. However, if you have all of these palettes that I'm going to use today for this duping video, you might want to, take a break and reconsider whether you really need this new palette, or you can sort of dupe the vibes or create an extremely similar look with what you already have, and that will satisfy your needs. Personally, I don't regret having the Bridgerton palette, but that's because I'm a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs when it comes to Pat McGrath Labs, and I have not been able to resist pretty much any of her eyeshadow palette releases in the past year. But that is a me problem, not a you problem, so maybe you are going to be a lot smarter than I am, and perhaps by the time we're done with this video you are going to be completely cured of your desire to own the Bridgerton palette. So without further ado, let me explain how I'm going to do this video. I'm not actually going to tell you in advance what eye is going to be with which palette, so I'm going to do both of my eyes. We're going to do it step by step, and in the end of the video I will tell you exactly which eye is which, what I used for my non-Bridgerton eye, and you can try to guess in the comments which eye is which before I announce it in the video. I'm very curious whether it will be extremely obvious or the difference will be big enough for you to actually still remain in doubt until the very end. Plot twist. So without further ado, I have zoomed you in a little bit and we shall start. The first color I'm going to start with is the Plum Matte. There is a Plum Matte eyeshadow in the Bridgerton palette, and that is the first eyeshadow I'm going to apply on both of my eyes, without telling you on which eye which palette I'm using, because that makes things so much more exciting. Going in with my first shade and going to apply that here through my crease, a little bit through the outer corner, and then I'm going to blend it upwards. I'm going to repeat the process on my other eye using again a Plum Matte eyeshadow. And after this I'm actually visiting a friend, and I am very curious whether it will at all even occur to her that I'm not wearing the same eyeshadow look on both of my eyes. Which will be enough indication that these looks are actually distinguishable from each other, because if she can't tell that I'm wearing two different looks, then no one will be able to tell, apart from us, the real Pat McGrath Labs nerds. Now that I have smoked out the plum shade on both of my eyes, I'm going to go back into that very same matte plum shade and just apply the tiniest bit more here in the outer corner to slightly intensify and create a bit more dimension in the outer corner. So I'm going to pack the color. I'm not really going to blend it out too much because the whole point is that it needs to remain a bit more concentrated. And if you're noticing a little unblended patch over here, that's not the eyeshadow, that's just a little bit of an imperfection on my eyelid right now. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to repeat the same process as before on my other eye. Can you already guess the difference just based on the mattes? At first I thought it would be like super obvious, but now that I'm looking into my eyes, I can tell you it is not that obvious at all. So I'm curious how this is coming across on camera and whether you can already tell which one is which. Now for probably what's going to be almost the most exciting part of this video. Not quite the most exciting, but one of the most exciting parts of this video. I'm going to take a little bit of glitter glue and I'm going to apply just the tiniest bit on my moving lid, and over top of that I'm going to apply a purpley mauvey metallic shade. I think based on my comparison video you will know immediately which the two dupes are, but I'm not going to say anything right now, okay? I'm going to apply the eyeshadow using a little packing brush. I know you're all excited about the astral, but personally for me this is probably the most interesting part of this video. Okay, I'm going to clean off that brush. I'm going to flip it around and apply the plummy metallic on my other eyeball. Well, gosh darn you guys, if there's a difference between the two metallic shades on my lid, it is so insignificant that it is not obvious to the naked eye. And I think to an undiscerning eye, these two eyeshadows would be the exact same shade. Skills that kills. Let's apply a little bit of an inner corner highlight. I'm gonna be honest with you, this is probably not the most super exciting dupe part of this video, but we need an inner corner highlight, so we might as well. Okay, and now let's get to the part that you have all been waiting for. Let's apply the dupe of the Astral in the Bridgerton palette and see whether it will give the look away or not at all. Again, I have absolutely no way of predicting this because I actually have not tried this yet, so it is just as exciting for you as it is for me. I'm going to apply the Astral on this side now. And now I'm going to apply the Astral on this side. I'm gonna be honest with you, I actually thought this would totally give away which eye is which, but it's not. What do you guys think? Can you tell the difference? I'm going to finish off the look actually pretty simple. I'm going to apply the plum matte on both of my lower lash line areas. I'm going to apply mascara and then I will be back to tell you which one is which and what I used for each of my eyeballs. And we shall resolve the mystery of whether you can dupe Pat McGrath Labs with Pat McGrath Labs. I'm even going to shine an artificial light for you on these eyeshadows so that you can maybe detect the difference in the sparkle if there's any. This is your last chance to guess which eye is the Bridgerton palette. And it is time for the big reveal, time to dissipate the suspense. Which eye was the Bridgerton palette? Tan tan tan. My right eye was the Bridgerton palette. So maybe some of you were wondering why of all the looks I went for the one that you can create with only the plum shades and the Astral. The reason for that is if you haven't watched my original demo of this eyeshadow palette, this is my favorite look to come out of this palette because I'm not one to use berries very often. I think the berries with the Astral looked really cute and probably I would wear something like that maybe once a year, twice tops if I'm really feeling it. But my favorite look to come out of this palette was the one with the two plums and the Astral over top of that. And in my original video, when I was swatching this specific shade, this is the shade Duchess Divinity, I swatched it against the dupe that I have within my own Pat McGrath collection. And at first I was so confused because I thought I had swatched by mistake the same shade twice over. And then I had to stare for a really long time and I detected 0.0, maybe even more zeros, 1% difference between the two eyeshadows, and I said that there was like a tiny bit of difference and if we split hairs maybe we could call them different shades, but I actually think it is a little bit delusional to think that the two shades are different from each other. They're pretty much the exact same shade. Now what did I do on my dupe eye? Let me show you. So the plum matte that I chose to dupe, the plum matte from the Bridgerton palette, is the one from the Eternal Eden quad. So that is this shade over here. When I started applying the two shades, I was a little bit afraid that you can already detect the difference, because the shade from the Bridgerton palette is just a little bit more cool toned and a little bit deeper in tone, whereas this one is just slightly more almost like mauve pink. But that said, when I started like piling on the color and really building it up, I could tell that there was a little bit of a difference, but really it was not that much. That brings me to another point though. The Eternal Eden quad was not exactly Pat's most beloved and most popular release, so I'm sure a lot of you probably don't actually have this quad and cannot dupe the look on this side using this eyeshadow specifically. However, and I know that it's going to be a different eyeshadow and I know that it's not quite the same thing, but I think more of you will have the Divine Rose 1 palette, where you will have this shade over here called Velouria. Now Velouria is much more gray in tone, so this will go in a much cooler direction if you were to apply Velouria. However, if you wanted to keep it a little bit more warm toned, you could just go straight into the Divine Rose 2 palette, because that is, I think, the one of the other major dupes that I found within my collection, and the shade that I was referring to earlier that confused me with Duchess Divinity was from the Divine Rose 2 palette. So on my lids I have the shade Eleganza, which is this beautiful like mauve plum purple that we have here, and which I originally swatched next to Duchess Divinity, and it fucked with my mind because I thought I had swatched the same shade twice over. So this is the shade that I have on my lid all over here. And like I said, if you have the Divine Rose 2 palette and you wanted to just use that, you could just take this shade. It will not create the same effect because this shade is a lot more red toned and warmer, whereas these are much cooler in tone, the two plums that I put through my crease. But like I said, it really depends what part of the look you're trying to recreate the most, and I think for most people it probably will not be the plum matte. Another dupe that I don't have in my collection anymore, I think would be the plum matte that came in her latest Lux Quad release, which is a shade in the Bronze Borealis Quad. So if you have that, I'm sure that they're almost identical dupes, this shade and the plum matte from the Bronze Borealis Quad. So there is another dupe for you within the Pat McGrath Labs collection. And then, of course, to the Astral shade, I don't think anyone would be surprised that the shade I applied on this eye as my Astral was the shade Astral White from the Subliminal palette. And the Subliminal palette is a cult favorite. I think a lot of people will have this palette. And like I said, even if you were to completely disregard the plummy tones of this look, you could just apply the browns or something instead. Go on with Eleganza and apply this Astral. And this was another moment in the look when I thought, oh, I'm sure the Astral will look quite different, it will give the look away. But then I applied the Astral on this side. I applied the Astral from the Bridgerton palette, which is really, really gorgeous, by the way, this one here. And I thought, well, dang, I don't really think they look so different from each other. They are very different in terms of their textures, because this shade, the shade Astral White from Subliminal, and Regency Blue, which is the shade from the Bridgerton palette. So this is the Subliminal, this is the Bridgerton palette. They have different textures in the sense that the shade from Subliminal is much smoother, whereas the shade from the new palette has that newer, flakier, drier texture to it. And I think because of that, it also makes the shade from the Bridgerton palette just a little bit more sparkly. And you can also see that swatched next to each other, the two shades look a little bit different, because the Regency Blue shade has more of like that cooler toned baby blue sparkle, and the shade from Subliminal leans almost a little bit more teal in its duochrome. However, once you put them on the eye over top of Duchess Divinity, can you really tell there is so much of a difference? And when you shine a light over top of Astral White also is quite sparkly. So there you have it. I think Pat McGrath Labs duped herself and us quite a bit with this new Bridgerton palette, because this palette just features a bunch of shades that we already have in some sort of shape or form in our collections. Again, provided you have a relatively large Pat McGrath Labs collection. Like I said, I did the plum look from this palette because, first of all, I don't enjoy the berries as much, and second of all, I've already seen a couple of duping videos for this specific palette, and a lot of them were centered around the berry shades. So I thought I would like to take my duping in a different direction. First of all, because it suits my personal needs and preferences better, and second of all, because I think you have something more to add to your, you know, information arsenal when you're making the decision of whether you would like to purchase the Bridgerton palette because it will be something new and unique to your Pat McGrath collection, or whether it is shadows we already have and you don't need to spend your money on it. Again, I cannot tell you what to do because you see that I have all of these other palettes and I still bought the Bridgerton palette and I still don't regret owning it because I just enjoy having the variety of the different textures. I like all of these plum shades together. I don't have to pull out 3 different palettes in order to create this look. I can just pull out my little Bridgerton 6-pan. So it really all depends on your personal priorities and preferences. But as far as I am concerned, these two looks are almost identical to each other. So there you have it. I think it is relatively easy to dupe the vibes of this palette with your existing collection, so you don't have to necessarily run out and buy it first thing tomorrow. Think about it, sleep on it, and, you know, make up your mind. Pun not intended. I really hope this video was useful to you and it will help you in your decision making. Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next video. Ooh, actually, no, you know what? I realized something. One of you had asked me to swatch the Astral shade from the Bridgerton palette over a black base, and now that I have my Subliminal palette open in front of me, we can immediately proceed to trying that. So I'm going to swatch a little bit of the black matte shade over here. So there you have it. The dark base really pulls out those blue tones in Regency Blue to the front, and you get this gorgeous black with loaded with a bunch of like pink and blue sparkles. Gorgeous. Okay, and now I'm really done. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!